Hello everyone, my name is Sean Bearden, and today I want to give a brief introduction to my research. I recently defended my PhD in physics in October 2020. I was part of the Di Ventra group at UC San Diego, and the title of my dissertation was Investigation of the Physics of Digital Memcomputing Machines. But today I want to try something different and make these concepts accessible to everyone, so I'm going to tell a little story, The Search for King Turing's Stolen Treasure, which features Captain Boolean. But before we go into that story, let me give you the overview. So first, I'm going to give you a real brief introduction to the Mem computing paradigm. I'm going to keep it simple, and then we're going to jump into the story and understand why we need Mem computing in the first place, and then see how Mem computing compares to other techniques that are common when solving difficult problems like we solve. So, Mem computing is an efficient computing paradigm that uses memory to process and store information in the same physical location. Efficient means it's fast, and it's different than what modern computers do because of the way it utilizes memory. So let's understand modern computers. The way those work is with von Neumann architecture. So if you're watching this video on a computer right now, I'm almost certain that computer has a CPU, and there is some memory that CPU communicates with. If it's computationally intensive, that memory is going to be random access memory, or RAM as you may know it. And your RAM could be really good, your CPU could be really fast, but they still have to communicate with each other, and that causes what is known as the von Neumann bottleneck. So the way Mem computing gets around this bottleneck is it doesn't allow it to exist. The computational part and the memory are in the same physical location, and then the way we say it is the computation occurs with and in memory. Okay, so that's what the Mem computing architecture is. Now let me be clear, I don't actually build these machines. I'm a theoretical physicist. I simulate these machines with computer programs, okay? Now, we got that out of the way. Let's jump into the story. So, to understand why we need these Mem computing machines in the first place, we need to understand why certain problems are very difficult to solve, all right? So here's a digital Mem computing machine. It could be described as a self-organizing logic circuit, and we use these for constraint satisfaction problems and combinatorial optimization problems. If you've never heard of those, don't worry. You don't need to understand them to follow this story, but I want to briefly say constraint satisfaction means there's a bunch of rules and you have to satisfy all those rules, okay? You can't break any of the rules. In combinatorial optimization, it's similar. There's a lot of rules and you try to satisfy as many of them as you can, okay? And these have many, many applications. Perhaps one of the most technologically relevant ones in this day and age is artificial intelligence, which requires fast solutions to these styles of problems. So a robot, for instance, can interact in real time with its environment. So we have King Turing and Captain Boolean. What has happened? Captain Boolean has stolen King Turing's treasure because Captain Boolean's just a dirty, rotten scoundrel, and he and his pirates need to bury that treasure. Okay, so they show up to an island and bury the treasure because that's what pirates do, right? I don't know why, they just love to bury things. And they quickly realize if they bury the treasure, because they've stolen so much treasure, in a hole, it'll be obvious from afar. Like if you get to that island, you'll see that big mound there, and you'll be like, the treasure's right there. Go get it, right? And Captain Boolean has a problem with leaving his maps laying around, and people copy them down, go to his island, they see exactly where that treasure is, they steal it, and Captain Boolean is just mad. So he's trying to come up with a new way to hide his treasure because he knows he's just forgetful. He leaves his map laying around, he forgets about it, and these type of things keep happening over and over and over again. So he comes up with an idea. He's going to use the concept of time to make this a very difficult thing to accomplish, to steal his treasure, right? How does he do that? He throws bombs all over the island, and then he blows holes all over it. So now, if he goes to the island, he'll just throw his treasure down in one of these holes, And if you show up trying to steal it, you have to search all those holes. It's going to take a really, really long time. And he's hoping, Captain Boolion's hoping that you get discouraged or he catches you in the act, okay? And this is essentially why it's difficult to solve these style of problems, these combinatorial optimization or these constraint satisfaction problems, right? So now that we understand why they're difficult, we still want to solve them, right? So there's already techniques that exist for solving these. So we want to see how Mem computing compares to those. So I'm going to explain these techniques through the story to you. All right. So King Turing, he decides to explain the concept of walk-sat. He decides to call up his problem solver known as Walkington Statisticius. All right. Walkington Statisticius is kind of a badass if you can't tell. And he's promised the king that he's going to find this treasure and bring it back quickly. But when he shows up to the island and he sees all these holes, he gets a little discouraged and decides to have a drink to ease his nerves. His eyes get a little bit wobbly. He screams cowabunga and jumps into the first hole that smells like treasure. And he jumps around in there, stumbles a little bit. He thinks he might find the treasure. Then he decides, you know what, I don't think the treasure's in here. And he tries to get out of the hole. He stumbles, falls back down, looks a little bit more, and eventually gets out of the hole and goes to a new hole. But this new hole is much deeper. And he's stumbling around. He's trying to climb out. He's looking. He doesn't see anything. And every time he tries to climb out, he falls back down. And maybe eventually he'll sober up a little bit and get out of the hole, but he's wasting a whole lot of time. And weeks are going by right now. And King Turing's patience is running out. All right, King Turing is livid. So the next technique, survey-inspired decimation, to explain that, what King Turing does is he calls up his engineers and says, I need you to design a robot for me, okay? And the reason he wants a robot is one, it can't get drunk, and two, he needs something that he can rely on to get his treasure. So he thinks a robot's gonna be the best case. So his engineers build a robot. We'll call it the Decimator robot. And what Decimator does is he's been designed to make smart assumptions. So when he goes around the island, he decides, you know what, Captain Boolean would never bury his treasure or throw his treasure down one of these holes if it was near the shore, because it might wash away. And of course, Captain Boolean wants to come back for that treasure. Now, this is an assumption and he doesn't know if it's true. So after filling those holes, he goes looking for Walkington Statisticius and eventually finds him in a hole and helps him out so Walkington can continue his job. And Walkington jumps into another hole, stumbles around. He's still drunk because he's been drinking in the bottom of that hole. And the Decimator robot, keeping an eye on the time, is realizing that time is running out and the king is going to be mad yet again. So what does the robot do? He decides to self-destruct because that's what he does when he fails. And Walkington Statisticius sees this and scurries off to a new kingdom to be some other king's problem solver because he's done searching holes. All right. And now going into the digital mem computing technique, King Turing is not giving up. So he decides, you know what, I need to call a theoretical physicist for help. And he calls up my PhD advisor, Max Di Ventra. And Max tells him, your problem is you need digital mem computing in your robot. That'll make your robot work better. So King Turing says, great, I need you to talk to my engineers and design this robot. So Max helps out and they design the Membot. So what does the Membot do? Well, the Membot jumps in a hole, but rather than coming out of the hole, he can jump to other holes by tunneling through, right? And he tunnels and he tunnels and he eventually finds the treasure, okay? Now, to us, it looks like his tunneling was random, but to him, it's always leading towards the treasure. He will always lead directly to the treasure, and that's one of his special abilities, being a mem computing robot, okay? And this is essentially the property of digital mem computing that makes it so efficient, okay? And looking at one of these circuits, you can encode many styles of problems, right? Here, we've encoded a 3-sat problem into the circuit, a special case of Boolean satisfiability problem if you want to look into that. But we have shown, and in an upcoming publication that'll appear in scientific reports, we have shown that this digital mem computing machine is very efficient at solving these styles of problem, and I hope for it to be online by the end of 2020. Okay, and if you want more information on this, you can check out Massimiliano Di Ventra on Google Scholar, or email me directly at seanbearden@seanbearden.com. And if you enjoyed this video, please tell me in the comments. If you would like more in-depth description of all of these concepts that I've introduced, also let me know in the comments. And thank you for listening. Have a great day.